I'm very quickly and briefly introducing our panelists for this session. Our first panelist is Ms. Anju Dwivedi. Ms. Dwivedi is a senior social development specialist working in scaling city institutions for Asia and India in Global Water and Sanitation Center at AIT Thailand on sanitation. She has an experience of 28 years in the field of gender, inclusion, FSM, urban poverty, and livelihoods. Prior to her current engagement, she has actively engaged with Center for Policy Research in Scaling City Institutions for India, project to support policy research work in areas of FSM. Then we have with us Ms. Sandhya Haribal. She is Senior Project Manager from CDD Society. Sandhya brings over 22 years of experience in infrastructure development with focus on the sanitation sector. She's a civil engineer and MBA by education, and she has assisted several government departments, agencies, municipalities, foundations, and multilateral agencies in planning and implementation of projects across sectors. Finally, we have with us Ms. Anuya Bhide, Senior Design Expert at Primove Infrastructure Development Consultants. She is MTech Environment and Water Resources Engineering and has more than 10 years of experience in designing and modeling of urban wastewater and water supply networks and low-cost sustainable solutions for SLWM in rural scenarios. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our panel. I would begin by inviting Ms. Dwivedi to kindly come and share her work with us.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's always a challenge to be last, uh, yes. But what happens is the audience, the attendance becomes thin. And I think this is a very interesting session. Not that we all are working and have been very passionate about working in India on decentralized wastewater solutions, especially the black water, and considering there was a very slow pace and how India was portrayed internationally was very different as a co-pontification, country and all that. So seeing the journey from 2000, early 2000, and now moving to this is a great joy. So let me explain to you that what we did. I don't, this is basically because this is a session on black water, and we heard about plastic waste and grey water. Here, what I am going to present is about a very unique and innovative idea that we could work with the Odisha government on how their urban infrastructure projects, including FSTPs, were leveraged by the rural. So it was a unique model in the sense that we're not talking about building FSTPs in rural areas, which I'm not saying is not essential. That I'll explain. That also needs to be done. But also looking at if, as you know, if not all, let me just give you a very brief background that Odisha is one of the states in India which has actually adopted fecal sludge management in all their urban local bodies. And not only one or two, maybe some cities you will find more than one FSTPs. So it's like all 116 ULBs are covered with almost 120 FSTPs. So there was this infrastructure which was ready. So it was what we thought was necessary to honor Chief Minister's clarion call on Swachh Odisha, Swasth Odisha, by also leveraging rural households, connecting rural households with it. So just that example, I'll just quickly run through. Oh God, what happened? Yeah. So basically, as you may all be aware, that SDM Grameen framework tells about this thing, which is a decision making metric, which says that when water table level is below 3 meter, hard strata below 1.2 meter, and soil is permeable, then single pit retrofitting to twin pit is a good solution. And if not, then closest STP, FSTP less than 10 kilometers, which in fact now has increased to 15 or 20 if you see recent guidelines, where the co-treatment can be the best solution with the FSTP. If not, then if the water table is below 10 meter, land is 50 meter away from the surface water body, then there could be some possible solutions of deep row entrenchment and planted drying breadth. So if you see this quadrant, in fact, the screen is very good. It has actually, fitted these quadrants there. Is that all this right side is the greenfield area where you have to build something new. And while the left side is where you can have these tag-in or plug-in models where already there is an infrastructure, you can do it without spending too much on infrastructure. Uh, so if you see just a framework for actually, when we were when we were working in Odisha, there was this thing: why do you need FSM in rural area? Twin pit hota hai, twin pit mein zarurat nahi hoti, all that. So but what we found that even in the districts which claim that there is no need, you also need to have a very clear cut strategy based on whether the water table is high or low. So if you have a water table which is high, like we've heard our previous panelists speaking, or whatever you have, you still need FSM. And when there is a water table which is below, then you may go for high twin. If they are dominance of twin pit, it's okay. They're considered safe if they are built properly. We have found issues with the twin pits also. And high single pit can be converted, they can be retrofitted. But if there are septic tanks, you have to go for FSM. So there is a case of FSM. So if you hear that why rural needs FSM, you should just remember this slide. So what we did in rural, as I mentioned already, Odisha has gone and scaled up this model of urban FSM. So what we did, that we were working even supporting Odisha government and with help of CDD, who helped us in the technology there in Dhenkanal. We had this plant which was a small town, first small town plant in the city. Otherwise, they had the big ones in Amro. They started constructing together. So that's the brief background that the Dhenkanal rural side has 212 bodies and this population as per the census. So since this plant had come, we thought that let's pilot this idea, because sometimes piloting and then scaling up helps. So rather than going and saying that this is a solution for all your city, so since it was built, it was operational, this plant in urban areas, we thought let's put rural local bodies connect these local bodies. Just to give you an example, that Odisha is a very high water table state. Generally, if you see this map, you'll find various these areas. The dark blue colors of Dhenkanal has very high water table, and Odisha in any case most of the districts lie in that area. So, like as I said, so FSM have a case there. And what we did was, like earlier we heard our presenters, that we did a very, just not one is that secondary sources situational assessment, also went to the ground to test what people do, where are their toilets built, what kind of toilets. So we did during COVID, when COVID was there, just lockdown was opening up, we did a survey with 1,000 household population in 8 blocks. And just quickly, I will not take too much time, but like I just can brief it. So in the map, let me just take you. So in these places, we have seen urban, in any case, FSTPs, on these. So we looked at the 10-kilometer area and said this is an area which we call plug-in. And the areas which were lying beyond 10, we were calling them greenfield. So in our survey, we actually looked at which are the panchayats falling into. So you see, just quickly, I'll run through this, not wasting too much time on this. There's a full-fledged report in all our CPR website. It's just that we wanted to say that the access to toilet had increased, definitely, after SBM. And if you see the Dhenkanal complete district, it had gone up. But, if you see, the single pit was the predominant mode of, on-site sanitation system. It was not twin pit. So we challenged the government there that it is not twin pit, it's actually single pit, therefore FSM is required, and followed by, septic tank and, very few twin pits. And twin pits actually started growing only after 2018. Before that, it was always the single pit which were being constructed on the fewer localities. So even all these things, how many people said about the retrofitting, not many people were aware and they did not want to spend money and all that. So this survey was very important for the government to realize that, this whole thing of saying that rural mein zarurat nahi hai. So that was actually completely, challenged. So on the discharging providers, also we found that the municipal service providers and the private cesspool operators were there. And people were relying heavily on the manual labors, which is, of course, a bad practice, but still we found that poor people were doing that. And in any case, they were putting a lot of cost also. It's not that it was actually feasible. So that we did spatial analysis also to figure out that, which are the areas that can be plugged in. So if you see on the right side, we said these are the clusters because there were already STPs present. So we mapped which are those 10 kilometer, and then we moved to 15 and 20 as per the government advice. and which are the retrofitting and greenfield areas where you have to either go for retrofitting or have new FSTP or whatever, low cost or affordable, where you cannot, because it won't be viable financially for the truck to go so far, and even in the topography. So all that we did. Also, sorry, just also seeing that in our case, in our urban FSM, how the utilization of the plant was, what was the average. So as I was saying, that we need to see the do all the calculations. You can't just go and build something or start doing something without taking a full-fledged picture. So we did all that, and our decisions were completely this that if you have to estimate spare capacity. When there is a spare capacity, which is more, you have to increase the distance threshold. If you have proper desludging vehicles, I mean, not proper in the sense significant amount. If not, then if the demand is more and the spare capacity is low, then you have to reduce the distance threshold, because then you can't, go to 20, 15. Then you have to, actually saturate 10-kilometer radius and all. So these were some decision-making points, and we discussed a lot. So I just quickly take you through the top-down process of situational assessment, GIS and analysis, and infrastructure capacity, and all that was assessed. But a lot of workshops, consultations with rural local bodies, as well as the urban local bodies was done. A proper MOU was signed between the two. That what will be the tariff structure, whether the trucks will go, whether the regulations will fall, because when you go into the rural jurisdiction, urban regulations may not work. So all those kind of things were done and facilitated. And I'm glad to share, it is May 23 data. I mean, since then a lot must have, changed. But total trips of rural have increased. If you see, there was total, it was just the rural septage is 1608 KL, and which was huge in the sense because there was a lot of work on demand side, awareness building and all that. And this initiative has got a lot of recognition. The Himkanal municipality has also got the FICCI award. We at CPR Cypher last year, I mean December we got, and there were many attractions from the government, even at the national level. Lots of state governments have already visited to study this model. And now what we also did is soon after that we scaled up this model because this was picked up and it had got a lot of traction. So with UNICEF support, this was taken up by us with the government. And what is enabler is that you need to have a very strong political will at the state level. And we gladly had that because that was considered as an enabler, because even the chief minister and both ministries worked together and regular reviews and all that. And one important thing happened was that urban, for the first time in the history of India, I mean, I'm not talking about maybe wrong also because I'm not sure about the road projects, but any waste management projects and programs where the SBM Grameen, or if not SBM earlier, I did not come across any program which has funded SBM Urban. So SBM Grameen funds are being utilized by SBM Urban in Odisha to upgrade their system, because now the rural Sludge is coming, so you have to improve the fleet, you have to improve, maybe add more drying beds into your sludge, FSTP. So all that is being done. So this was something that was a very unique model. And when we were here, we presented this to also Winnie Mahajan, Madam Secretary, and she went there also from Odisha, from Ministry to see this in Odisha. So just like how you decentralize the nature-based low technology solution O&M by the community, because Odisha is also one state which is employing self-help groups to take up O&M. So it's not a private thing. It's very low cost and very easily operatable. And surplus capacities of FSTPs and MRS, because I forgot to mention that in the second phase when I told launch, it was not just not FSM, but also MRS. But since this session is on FSM, so I'm only focusing. But this was like, how the rural, waste was also being catered here. So I'm not going into the detail. Just that you need to have a proper model based on who are your providers, where is the call center, how call center will work, where the panchayat, how the complaints from the panchayats will come, and whether the call center will cater to it, where there is a register. So, so like I told you, the data that has been captured because they are very proficient and skilled call centers, and which is mobilizing vehicles movement, where to go, where's the demand, and whom to cater and all that. So, and what is also happening is that a strong monitoring and evaluation system is generated. Safa app is a kind of an application used by Ganjam, because that was very specific to Ganjam at that point of time. So when we were scaling up from Himkanal to other in Ganja, what we found that they are using that Safa app to monitor so that was only for urban. So through this program, we integrated rural also. So all rural demands, etc., coming and properly being managed. So these dashboards are being generated, where secretaries and their departments can see. So there's a lot of focus on monitoring because we found that monitoring is something which is required. Otherwise, every hard work can just fall through cracks because no data, nothing is there. Because if somebody wants to know how much sludge these plants are, treating, then we did a lot of capacity building and awareness generation. Some very innovative interactive communication materials in English and Odia both are available on how Gram Panchayats have to manage fecal sludge and what are the options, and very lucid, comprehensible language is used so that people can understand. A lot of awareness happened. And the last slide, which is very impactful in the sense that other than the data, which is written there, where all these, like I was saying, 115 FSTPs across the state are now linked to rural Gram Panchayats. So it is a very achievement by the Odisha government. And I mean, these numbers are a little old in the sense because we then from CPR are not working on the ground like that. But there are lots of trips have been increased. FSTPs are being rebuilt and rebuilt, not rebuilt, maybe augmented. Fleets are augmented. Successful vehicles are augmented. And I think from FICCI, this is something that I want to urge to the corporates that they can really invest in supporting Gram Panchayats in these kind of mechanisms where they can generally without too much cost and those successful vehicles etc. aboard they can be supported and all that, because we found that the ULB successful vehicles were limited. They had to buy. Now with Odisha they are buying because now the SDM Grameen Fund is going there. But other states, if they want to practice, these are some things which really need attention. And the biggest thing that we achieved recently is that this letter is 27 June only, where based on Odisha model, now the SBM Grameen guidelines specify and have mentioned, revised in their guidelines and put this. I've just taken that excerpt, but it's a big 2-3 page guideline, where they have mentioned that how other states can learn from it and SBM Grameen funds can be utilized by SBM Urban to integrate or to upgrade the FSTPs as well as the cesspool vehicles and all that, so that you don't have to build every time. It is just that rationalizing what is already being done at the urban. So this is something that I wanted to share with you, that how with these innovative ideas and with convergence, because a lot of work is required from the ULDs and the panchayat level at all 3 tiers, at the state level, even at the central level. It's a perfect example of convergence at all levels. So this was something I wanted to share. And a lot has already been written by our colleagues in various kinds of journals and forums too, and have been recognized internationally also. So yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm now requesting Ms. Sandhya to kindly come and share her work with us. Thank you, ISC and FICCI team for having me over here and to giving me an opportunity to share our learnings and experiences. And good evening to everyone. I know I am looking at angry or pleading eyes to finish it. Either ways, finish it soon. So I'll try to be as brief and crisp as possible. Because as much as it is a disadvantage to speak in the last, it's also an advantage that a lot of things get covered. So I will not have to speak too much in terms of what work we are doing or what are the issues. There are a lot of common issues which have already been discussed and debated in detail. So before I start off, I would like to just highlight some of our marquee projects which were instrumental in us learning new things and trying to take these learnings at a scale level. So whether it was India's first urban level, town level FSTP or the highest FSTP or the first rural FSTP, we also had one very unique case of a village situated at the confluence of Kaveri, where there was high water table, every year flooding kind of situation, and we had to set up an FSTP there. So these were challenging. There were a lot of problems that we faced, a lot of blockages on the way. But these have also given us a lot of insights into what can be improved as we move ahead. So I'll try to focus on those things. I won't delve too much on why really this is important. Why do we speak so much about FSM or about grey water today? But this is not just the issue of Swachh Bharat Mission as a scheme or as a government program, but this links to a larger issue that we have, right? We are speaking of water stress today, water security issues today. We are talking about climate change. And what we are doing at a small level is also going to contribute in a positive way to the larger issues that we are facing as a planet. So, of course, we did have a water and a nutrient cycle, which over the years we have disrupted for all the wrong reasons. We started abusing our surface water bodies. We started discharging a lot of wastewater into it, untreated wastewater. We started going for chemical fertilizers instead of the organic ones. And all those runoffs are also ending up into our water bodies. And since the surface water bodies are so polluted, we are then going to the next level of sucking out water from the underground aquifers. But this has added not only to stress of water availability, but also to a lot of pollution. And that's the reason we need to be so much on our toes to tackle this issue. And we are not speaking of an issue just at a village or a district level, but at a country level. So, of course, the scale is huge. And to achieve this kind of scale, maybe not just this room full, even if it was full, it wouldn't have been sufficient. We need many more people from across districts, across states, and across all the stakeholder groups to work with us. So I'll try to put these into 4 5 questions that we started asking ourselves, saying what should be our strategy, how should we go about it, and who should be the people who are doing it, and when. The when is also equally necessary because this was in discussion with the Rural Drinking and Water Supply Department in Karnataka. And for them, the targets were also equally important. And I'm sure the government officials sitting here would agree with me. So I'll go one by one and I'll make it as quick as possible. I'll not delve too much into why FSM is required. Of course, our toilets have not been constructed the way they had to be. And this is what we had been facing for some time back. I can't say that now, luckily, because there have been a lot of efforts across many states. We have Odisha who's been showing us the way, not only in terms of just the technical issues, but also the administrative, finance, and the social impacts, right? So this was just to create an image of what is the scale of the kind of pollution that we do by discharging our untreated human waste or fecal sludge into the water bodies, equal to 5,000 people going out in the open, relieving themselves in the open. So this is also to highlight why so much we delve and we speak about fecal sludge because of the pollution potential. And you can just focus on the last column, which says how many times it is more polluting than the normal sewage or even grey water. So yes, our question first was that when we go at a Gram Panchayat level, when we started with the first cluster, we said, is it really required at a Gram Panchayat level? Not really, because we know that we don't get so much sludge. The practices are quite different from the urban counterparts. And that's why we had to do exercises using certain scientific methods, projection methods, whether it was in terms of population or in terms of the desludging practices themselves. And we were over the first few projects convinced that nothing matters as much as the practical learnings. We might have a scientific ways of assessing the capacities, assessing the kind of modules, but also what eventually makes it work or break is the way it is maintained and it is managed. And it has to be as simple as possible. The simpler the system, the better it is managed. That was the ethos that we really followed. So one of our ex-commissioners' favorite statement used to be, just make it idiot-proof. That even if an idiot is put on a job, I know it sounds a little regressive, but anyone who just doesn't know anything can also not mess up the system. So our effort was to keep it as simple as possible. So yeah, approaches were different compared to the urban counterparts. Firstly, we saw across our different geographies, across the different geoclimatic conditions, the kind of developments also in rural area, that the old containment systems were large. They were as large as we've seen places where they were equal to a room size. So they really didn't worry about emptying. And when we would say that, ask them that why it's a room size, and the opening would have been given in the hall, right in the hall, in the middle of the house. They'll say, no, we never worried because we didn't empty it. So, of course, in the recent toilets that have been constructed, they are feeling the pinch after the first 3 or 4 years because they need emptying. And that's where there's a lot of discussion saying, okay, where do we get it emptied from? There were some gram panchayats or villages which did not have the comfort of having a town nearby. So they had to rely on private operators. And private operators were charging them exorbitantly. So this is another thing that we have also tried to address in the process of scaling. So yes, what could be the solutions? I will not Then too much on the decision metrics, as Anju has already covered. Co-treatment, we did work in terms of preparing a state level kind of study. We studied 4 different kinds of STPs across different administrative zones and came up with some kind of a agreement, kind of a structure saying that we could do co-treatment in these cases. We've given them certain guidelines, and this have been also disseminated through a lot of training. So I'll speak also a bit about the training later on. So co-treatment as the first option at the nearest either urban STP or FSTP. But also we help them in understanding in what condition should the STP be used for co-treatment based on its kind of technology, its current usage, its current utilization percentage, and on the distance from the villages. Second, of course, was trenching. But here in trenching, what we did is that instead of the regular conventional trenching where people had challenges of finding the ideal kind of site, we said, why don't you do like an alternate trenching? We made a guideline for it saying that you take a 30 by 20 meters plot, and in that you can do alternate trenching by making trapezoidal kind of rectangular trenches instead of the row trenches. So that is another easy update that we provided an option with. In terms of technologies, of course, there are a few technologies over the past, I think, whole decade. We've seen many newer technologies being implemented in fecal sludge treatment as well. But we try to bucket them into, for ease of understanding, into active and passive ones. So active are the ones which are usually conventionally, as Sir had earlier said, highly engineered ones. They would be suitable, maybe in certain places where the ULBs or the PRIs can afford them, and where there's a lack of space availability, and there is enough electricity and enough human resources to manage it. So in these cases, maybe the conventional could be tried, but in the rural, largely, we are going for passive systems. These are the nature-based systems which require very little maintenance, very low amount of maintenance, and if you site them in the solid waste treatment facility area itself, it becomes easier. And that's how we've tried to reduce the operating costs also in some cases by utilizing the same team and training them to operate these plants. So, of course, as for the guidelines, we have stuck to the first two largely across the state, whether it's planted drying beds or unplanted drying beds. And we have also given certain guidelines to the district officials along with the training saying if you have to select a technology, please don't be limited to just the ones that are running on ground. Because usual government statements would be that I want to do something that's already working. I don't want to take the risk of something new. So in that case, of course, it is okay to take new risks with new technologies, but certain questions should be answered saying, what is my intent for treatment? Is there any end use or reuse option that I have available? What are the resources available with me? And lastly, what is the input and input quality and quantity? That also matters even in fecal sludge treatment. So yes, this I'll just quickly skip through the kind of reuse potential we are speaking, because our general assumption is that when it's rural, you can just use it for agriculture or horticulture or whatever. But then we also have seen certain villages, especially peri-urban villages, which didn't have much uptake for reuse. So they came back saying, no, we don't really want to do this because it's adding a burden on us to figure out about what to do with the treated sludge and the additional water that is being generated. Though these are small quantities, they could largely use it in their landscaping itself. But again, it set us thinking that, yeah, we should not limit reuse to just a certain kind in the rural areas. So next is the how. Really, how did we go about? We have just 2 minutes for you. I'm so 2 minutes and we're done. Don't worry. So the how, I just wanted to say that the state has come a long way, whether it is in terms of policy formulation. We also prepared a lot of guideline documents. The general tendency would be in scale up to just copy whatever is being done in a place, replicate. We said, no, this will not work. We even prepared technical workbooks. We prepared template documents. We've trained engineers, and luckily in Karnataka, we had the Panchayat Raj department having responsibility under one official for both Narega as well as SBM. So that worked in our favor because in that sense, we could sit and plan out many activities where there could be convergence of funds, and that's how work happened faster. So whether it's in terms of technical support, in terms of training and capacity building, we provided about 3 years of service in technical handholding, which we felt is essential. You all would agree that, suddenly you can't provide a service and exit out of it. So we just tapered it down, saying that first we were full-fledged, we did pilots, we did training, we provided 2-3 people team just to help them out. And now we've exited, and now we see that the state is going ahead with implementation. And thanks to the LHI model, because these are the kind of supports which the governments also look forward from the corporates. As it was rightly said in by one of the panelists, that there's enough money for construction, not to worry about it. The headache comes of how to spend the money properly, what kind of solution to put on ground, and how to make it running. So making it up and running, there are a lot of excellent examples that we've discussed in terms of SHGs, using SHGs, using the existing solid waste management facility team and training them to use to operate these FSTPs. So that's how we've been able to scale up. We've done a lot of use a lot of maps, GIS maps also to identify such locations and cluster the villages around. The state level a lot has been done, and then it has been passed on to the district level authorities to take it up from there. So yes, one important challenge which we still face is understanding the business of FSM. And when I speak of business, it's about the desludging business. And this is where we are trying to talk about not just the government vehicles, of how to manage them, how to make them running, and be able to at least break even, if not make profits, but also speaking up about small time private desludging operators and how we can bring them into the fold. So there have been many other states which have sort of used systems of licensing and empaneling, and that is the process that's still on in Karnataka. And we intend to take that up and make it a little more well-formed kind of a system. This is just to give a brief idea about what kind of documents were shared. There was a full-fledged team set up at the center state level itself, which was again trickled down to the district levels also. So we had SLWM consultants working from the state office as well as the district office, who are really quite instrumental in pushing things, in ensuring that the approvals are there on time, ensuring that the files are moving on time. In terms of capacity building and IEC, a lot of discussions have happened, but this was also likewise done for liquid waste, and very, very critical for liquid waste, because this is something that we can't see. What we can't see can't be a problem. So in that sense, the state team also developed an panel list of people from the media, organizations from the media, and got videos done from the district levels itself. So there were simple Gram Panchayat teams who came and prepared videos, and there was a lot of pride factor in them that, their messages going out to everyone. This just to show an example of the MOUs we made in two cases. One was for co-treatment with the urban local bodies, and the other was for the rural FSM projects, where we did it at a cluster level. And yes, on regulation and monitoring also, there is still a team that is working from the state office to ensure that information is being passed out at the right time, and reporting is also done continuously. There are still some challenges. We are still not there. We still have a few steps to cover to be able to show some impact, and those are the ones which are listed down. Land issues still exist even in the rural areas. The desludging practices are different. There are a lot of aspirations to do whatever the urban counterparts are doing. We've had many villages on the peripheries of large cities who come to us and say, we had money, we put up a UGD, now please help us with a treatment system, but we don't have money for it. So we're trying to figure out ways to even work with such situations, because even they need a solution end of the day. So that's about it. I hope I've not exceeded my time, and happy to take any questions either now or later on. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, ma'am. And now calling upon our final panelist, Ms. Anuya from Primove Infrastructures.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Can I have the presentation, please? And continuing with what Sandhya ma'am said, that it's in a way good to be the last person, as even more things are completed. So I'll just cut short my presentation to a few things that I would want to talk about. So we have spoken enough about toilets and their functionality. The thing is, in the haste of achieving the ODF free status, we undertook toilet construction at a massive scale and missed out a few points. And that is why we require retrofitting at a higher level than that would have been expected. There are multiple components in the toilet that are found to be non-functional or not functioning up to the mark because of certain points that either were missed, as sir said, that the trainings took place later and the program had proceeded by that time, or generally lack of technical know-how, or trying to find a solution that is like one fits all. We know that our nation is very diverse, and therefore we cannot have one fits all kind of a solution. So yes, there are issues with the toilet rooms, pits, and all the components of a toilet. I wouldn't want to focus on all the components, but pits is one thing that I would like to take up. And usually there are single pit toilets that have been built up at multiple locations. Also, there are toilets, single pit toilets that are built in locations which where the soils have low permeability or the water table is really high. In such considerations, like when the permeability of soil is low, the water does not get out and percolation does not happen, the decomposition time is really high. In cases where the water table is really high, there is a good chance of contamination. So there is one option called tiger toilet, which can be utilized in such cases where the earthworms are utilized for digestion of fecal sludge. As you can see in the picture here, okay. As you can see, down there we provide a gravel layer above which a biomedia is placed, which is basically a mixture of coconut husk and cow dung. And on the top of that, earthworms, a specific species known as tiger worms, are loaded. The fecal matter falls in the center of the pit, wherein the earthworms come, consume the fecal matter, and as they move aside, they convert the fecal matter into vermicompost, which is then accumulated along the periphery of the tank. So at any point of time, we really do not have to deal with the fecal sludge, and also we do not have to wait for the whole tank to be emptied. Also, if there is a water table which is really high, the water that gets down the gravel layer is treated, and there is very low to nominal risk of water contamination. In case the soil is not permeable or semi-permeable, then we can always channelize the water outside to nearby drains, whatever is possible. So this is just a diagram and some of the positive points of having tiger toilets. So these are found to be very useful in remote areas where there are also multiple excavations, or sending teams for multiple times for construction is not really possible. In those locations, we tried having tiger toilets, which are performing really well. Also, we have tried tiger toilets in some raised tiger toilets in the areas which have high water table. So such are the locations where tiger toilets can be used. Now, septic tanks have, I would like to focus a bit on the points that we should take care in a septic tank. People have really gone far with their imagination in construction of septic tank. The septic tanks everywhere are not really watertight structures. They have honeycombed walls, or not really a base slab, or things like that. And then you really do not know what to do about it. So the first thing is we really need to retrofit it. When we call a septic tank, we have to have a septic tank which is watertight as per the design of IS 2470. And then if that is ensured, at least we can desludge it and have a septic management system. If we have something in between of a septic tank and a twin pit toilet, we'll never figure out what is it to go about it. So that is one thing that I would want to focus here. Now, even if you look at the percentages, this is the data that I took yesterday from the Swachh Bharat Mission dashboard. The percentage might look really small, that only 12 to 13% of toilets are single pit and twin pits. However, if you look at the numbers are really high. So that gives us, as Anju ma'am was mentioning, that there is definite need of a fecal sludge management system and fecal sludge treatment plants. So what is fecal sludge management is sufficiently said about. I wouldn't want to repeat the things. There are certain things about the fecal sludge management chain, however, which are not put enough focus about. So, firstly, the containment unit. If we are saying the containment unit, it has to contain the things sufficiently that it can be dislodged at least. The material should be pumpable at least. Then, when we come to the emptying and transportation, this business is not really organized. There are a few malpractices that are going on, and we need some kind of licensing and licensing that ma'am spoke about. That needs to be done. This needs to be converted into an organized industry so that the people who are involved in the industry as well as the household owners both can get benefited from it. As we talk of the conversions model, the conversions can not just like what has happened in Renkanar or parts of Odisha. We do not need to restrict our conversions to the treatment only. We can extend the usage of vehicles also. About the treatment, there is quite a need for treatment. And last but not the least, people are not really aware of what can be done with the byproducts that are created out of the treatment. So these are some of the issues. Like people are not aware of septic tanks, as ma'am mentioned that now they are somewhere figuring it out that yes, it is needing a desludging, or sometimes it is made so used that it will never need desludging. But either ways, it is a wrong practice. So IEC, massive IEC on this part needs to be undertaken. Then lack of services, lack of treatment facilities, and lack of knowledge about what can be done with the byproducts are the things that these are the challenges that majorly need IEC, but it is not sufficient to have IEC on that. We also need infrastructure so that we start walking from both the ends so that kahin na kahin beach raste mil hi jayenge with a positive hope that somewhere will meet up. So these are simple technologies that can be used. Most of them are already discussed by both of the speakers earlier. I would just like to focus on some points that depro entrenchment typically being very simple is also area intensive. And if the area is not like, if the land available is not selected properly, it can have a risk of water contamination, just like the pit system has if water table is high. Then coming to sludge drying beds, the sludge drying beds specifically provide solid liquid separation, and then both the leachate and the sludge needs to be stabilized. The leachate needs to be treated, and then both the byproducts can be used. As like the water can treated effluent can be used for non-potable purposes like agriculture, landscaping, or any other. If there is a chemical industry nearby, maybe that can be utilized, and the manure can be used in farms. Now, coming to vermi based basically is use of earthworms and a consortium of earthworms and other bacteria. Earthworms, like it is known that the gut of earthworm contains quite a lot of variety of bacteria, and it is not restricted that if an earthworm is working the other microbes won't work. So it is whole of the ecosystem in the tank that works on the fecal matter. As a result, the fecal matter is digested, stabilized, and vermicompost is formed out of it. But as this is like we are putting the fecal matter and it is to be consumed by earthworms. Now, one thing about earthworms is they cannot sustain flash loading. Therefore, if anaerobic digestion is given prior to that, so that the flash loading is avoided. Because earlier in some presentation, we have seen that the range of fecal sludge is from 10K to 50K. Now, that is quite a lot of variation for any microbe to digest, and specifically earthworms. They are really efficient, but they have their own concerns. So long as we are very friendly with them, they are very friendly with us. But then we have to see that they are not flash loaded. And then the organics are converted into vermicompost. Unlike planted or unplanted sludge drying beds, there is no separate time required for sludge digestion or stabilization. The process goes on continuously. The vermicompost is usually accumulated along the periphery of the tank, whereas the fecal sludge is discharged at the center of the tank. So, with a simple safety gear like gloves and mask, any person can just take off the vermicompost and the tank is good to go. So, there's no need to completely desludge the tank at any point of time. This is a flow diagram of vermi-based FSTP. So it starts with a screen chamber. As we know, anything that we do not want in our house is simply flushed in the toilet. And so the septic tank contains anything like diapers, sanitary pads, plastic, paper, anything and everything. So screening is must. It is then followed by anaerobic digestion so that the waste is stabilized. It is then loaded over a vermibade filter. This typical one is of the Tiger biofilters, which is a patented technology which was formed by Primove and is now implemented by TBF Environmental Solutions. So TBF bed 1 is the place where fecal sludge is discharged. The liquid components goes down the gravel media. The solids are retained at the upper portion. The composition is very similar to that of a Tiger toilet digester. So at the lower half we have gravel media, then biomedia loaded with earthworms. So the water passes, the liquid portion passes through the gravel media and is collected in a tank. It is then loaded over the TBF2 tank, where again the earthworms act upon the organics and clear water is discharged out. It is then polished or and disinfected, and this water can be used for any non-potable purpose. In both the tanks, we get vermicompost at the periphery of the tank, which can be used for agricultural purposes. We also have seen the importance of co-treatment, and one such co-treatment plant is working in Malkapur in Satara district of Maharashtra, where the initial STP was constructed with which is based on MBBR technology, and the town has quite a lot of septic tanks also, and nearby gram panchayats are also now discharging into the same plant. So fortunately, we had space enough that we could install this plant. So, firstly, the fecal sludge is unloaded into screen chamber, which is then transported to the holding tank. Now, because of the space crunch, we have to have a pumping system. If we are benefited by the terrain and space availability, we can always go for a gravity-based system. It is then sent to the anaerobic digester, followed by TBF filters, and then the water that comes out or the effluent that comes out from the TBF1 filters is now loaded into the raw sewage sum of the existing STP. So this is one example of co-treatment. We have number of plants in various districts like Kerala, UP, Maharashtra, and we are planning a few in West Bengal as well. So this is one of the outlet parameters that have been monitored by at the Kalpetta plant, which is in Kerala. So as you can see, the BOD was like the plant was commissioned in 2019. So after a month or two, when the whole of the biological activity full-fledged was set into the system, you can see that the BOD constant is well within the limits. The NGT limit is 10 mg per liter, and we are having something like 6 to 8. The recent result that I saw was of August 2000, like 21st August 2023, which gave a BOD value as low as 2 mg per liter. So almost potable. So this is also proven by the Mashilkar committee and is included in the CPHEO manual. These are the projects that we have already completed. As you can see, we have a few plants in various states, and we have a few going on. The technology is not very much terrain or climate. Like you don't have to really check out or tweak a lot with the technology depending on the climate variation. The earthworms are friendly enough, as I mentioned, that it is only about the retention time that needs to be changed depending on what is the temperature variation. The earthworms have sustained really well without any feed for a period of up to 2 to 3 months. The only part is the plant at any point of time cannot go under submersions, is the only concern. If the plant is submerged, if the TBF filter basically is submerged, then there is a risk. But as during the site selection itself, we make it a point that the plant is always above the HFL. So none of the plants as of now have ever failed, and this is one nature-based good option, I guess, that can be utilized. So with this, I'll end my presentation. Thank you. I'll be up for questions.